And a business owner will once a year look at their public liability, their employer's liability, have insurance for the premises, etc., etc. Do they have insurance on their own life?
It's great having something as opposed to nothing, but equally, if that something you have is silent upon all of the key issues that you need addressing, it is pointless.
If something happens to you, who's going to collect your pension? Who's going to pay your care home fees? Who's going to pay your mortgage?
The most successful clients I have will always say to me, Roy, the two most important people in business are my accountant and my lawyer.
Hello and welcome to this edition of my podcast, and I'm really excited today to be speaking to my friend and fellow partner Roy Davey.
Hi Melinda.
Hi Roy. Roy is a commercial lawyer, and what we find is that he and I clash, meet, work together when people's personal and business lives come together, or perhaps I should say for the purpose of this discussion, should come together but often don't.
Yes.
So Roy, we've often had the conversation when I've said to you, a client's partner has died, but they were the sole shareholder and director in a company. And you'll say, why didn't they do this before? And you sometimes come to me and say the opposite type of situation.
Yeah.
What really should people be doing?
Well, look, exactly, Melinda. My client base are commercial individuals, commercial companies, but the person who's what really matters. They will focus all of their life developing their business, being successful, driven. It's not always about making the money, it's about the success.
Yes.
But what they will often forget or not want to deal with are the personal issues to them, such as making a will. And that's why I might see them, for example, they need a shareholders agreement. And I might say, well, what will happen when you die?
Yeah.
You know, where's your shares going?
Yes.
And they just automatically, I'd say 8-9 times out of 10 will say, Roy, we don't need to worry about that yet. Let's not think about that. You know, when that happens, I'll think about it then.
Yes. And they'll often buy a shelf company and use an accountant, because everybody knows they have to have an accountant because they think it will save them tax, or they just have to file their tax return.
Yeah.
But of course, they then don't necessarily tailor the documents that come with a shelf company to meet their personal needs.
Exactly. Look, I think that most businesses want to focus upon what they're great at, which is the product they're selling, designing, making, doing, whatever it is. And often the admin element to it, which is the company law elements, can seem quite boring.
Yes.
And also a bit of a luxury to an extent, Melinda. We have that conversation at times whereby people's perceptions of lawyers are, well, it's a luxury service. Do I really need to have it?
Yeah.
Whereas what we're fully aware of, and clients who we deal with, once they've had that experience and journey with us, is, well, you've actually saved me a lot of money, time, stress of issues potentially that would have existed in the future.
Yes.
So we're really pleased that you've done that for us now.
Yes. Well, because not only if something goes wrong, sadly, illness, death, does it mean that it's more expensive for somebody to resolve and often not the outcome that they want, but it adds to the tremendous burden and distress that their loved ones may be experiencing.
Yeah, yeah.
So if, as you say, somebody is a provider for their family and is working hard to make their business a profitable success in order to provide, have they stopped and thought about what if I wasn't here?
Yeah. A classic example being someone may make a will, may open a company, may do all of these things, but they may do it quite early on in their development of their business.
Yes.
And has what they have in place, be it a shareholders agreement or even a will, if they have done one, a basic will at the time, has that moved with their development of their business, their financial position, their family position?
Yeah.
And what you often will see, and I will refer to you at times, Melinda, or you'll come back to me, are scenarios of where, I mean, I can think of countless cases we've got at present, whereby the business owner, husband or wife, has passed away, has left the company to the husband or wife who is still there, who is not a business owner or, you know, might have their own business, may not work, but something completely unrelated. to what that business is, and has no idea
No.
what to do.
So they're neither in a position to run the business and ensure that there is a continued income stream for the family.
Yes.
And then they've also got the issue of how to wind up a company, I guess, if it's that type of business. And without the correct appointment of replacement directors, who the shares are going to go to, it just causes a huge delay, doesn't it?
Well, a delay and potentially a lot of expensive litigation, Melinda, because often businesses don't just simply have one owner. They may have silent shareholders
that's true,
or other business partners.
Yeah.
And that other partner, director of the business, shareholder, may not welcome the involvement of the husband or wife who is now alive into the business, which they have been happily running for many years.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, it's about having, I guess, if you're a co-director, a co-shareholder with a business colleague running a business together, you've got to kind of have those, I suppose, quite challenging conversations in addition to your business conversations about your personal circumstances and what each of you would think if the other died, or perhaps, well, it is certainly just as significant, became incapacitated.
Yes.
So, you know, we talk about, there's a lot of conversation now about lasting powers of attorney, but very often we're talking about them from the personal perspective, i.e., you know, if something happens to you, who's going to collect your pension? Who's going to pay your care home fees? Who's going to pay your mortgage? But we don't often have the conversation about directors of companies providing for who could be a director on their behalf if they became mentally incapacitated.
Yes. Yeah, no, that's miles away from the thought of a client who would come to me or a client who I already have.
Yeah.
Ever even thinking that. Because often a commercial business owner is used to being in charge, Melinda.
Yes, of
They're
course.
used to making very difficult decisions. They're used to being driven, ambitious and successful, as I say. So for them to have the potential thoughts, that a reality for them could be that they are no longer that same person, miles from it, is beyond their wildest imagination.
Well, you have to have a certain amount of self-belief, ego or whatever to put yourself in the position of being responsible for running a business. And so I suppose, as you say, facing your mortality or, as I say, incapacity is possibly worse in some ways.
Of course.
Because you're not dead. So there's not a death certificate produced to say this is what's happened. It's about who can do it on his behalf and her behalf without a lasting power of attorney. And I don't think that people are necessarily aware that a lasting power of attorney can appoint certain attorneys to deal with your personal bank account and certain other attorney to deal with being a director of the business.
Yes, no, exactly. And potentially insurance policies in place.
Yes.
A lot of people think about what's a common term, key man insurance, but that may not necessarily provide for your family.
Yes. And that brings us sort of onto tax in a way. So obviously in the last budget, it was announced that in 2027, pensions are going to be brought into your tax assessment when you die. In other words, inheritance tax will be payable on them. That's going to bring an awful lot more people into the inheritance tax bracket. I think it's currently about 6% of people paying inheritance tax. And for business owners, there is business property relief.
Yes.
I don't know how many of your clients, for example, really know whether their business would be entitled to business property relief on death. Now, that's a huge saving in tax and sometimes a slight tweaking of the way the business is set up.
I think you're right, Melinda. Hardly any of my clients would be fully aware of that. Again, that's not necessarily the focus.
No.
Often the focus is the now.
Yeah.
Look, Melinda, we're business owners ourselves. We have problems every day which might materialise and we need to deal with. We might need to think about forecasting, budgeting, etc. So often headaches, issues, which we often as human beings will perceive these, are things that we put to the back of the queue.
Yeah.
But as you rightly say, Melinda, they need to be at the front of the queue because it's just as important as strategically planning your budget, as strategically planning recruitment or how you want to develop your business. It's as equally important.
And the business owner will once a year look at their public liability, their employer's liability, have insurance for the premises, etc., etc. Do they have insurance on their own life?
No.
And obtaining the right type of insurance life policies, placing them in the right type of trust with the right advice. Is it tax deductible at times?
Yeah. I mean, look, it's a good point you raise. A business owner isn't always the stereotype perception of a multi-million-pound business with, numerous companies, national, international. So many people have buy-to-lets now.
Yeah.
They have, a property up north, or they may have bought their mum and dad's property, or their first place, they may have kept it. So a lot of individuals have buy-to-let properties now, Melinda. Yeah. And often those buy-to-let properties are in limited companies for tax purposes. I obviously am not an accountant. I don't necessarily know all of the tax benefits of doing so. But without question, it is more tax efficient, from my understanding, of owning such properties in a limited company. But what a lot of individuals fail to connect is the relationship between that ownership of a limited company and the property as an asset and what would happen when they die. And your world,
yes,
that's what they do not connect.
No, I know. And even I know when I've taken instructions from wills for people, they say, oh, yes, well, we've got a limited company, and pass over it and say, well, can I have some more information about that? How is that going to be? No, our accountant deals with that. Yes, but there's more to that. Your accountant won't be making your will right now.
Yeah.
And we're very happy to have roundtable discussions with people. In fact, they're really useful if that accountant can come round the table, and if people would approach planning for the unexpected in the same way as they plan their business strategy.
Exactly, Melinda. I mean, look, I personally, as a company commercial lawyer, work closely with accountants all of the time.
Yeah.
The most successful clients I have will always say to me, Roy, the two most important people in business are my accountant and my lawyer.
Yeah.
So the fact that the two don't work together is bizarre. So that's why often the best representation as a lawyer for a client and for an accountant for their client is for both professionals to work together.
Yeah.
Because accountants are fantastic, but they're great at what they do.
Yeah.
As lawyers, we're fantastic, but we're great at what we do. They are different worlds, different languages, but they interconnect.
They should do much more than they do. I was reflecting the other day because it's 5 years since we had the first COVID lockdown.
Yes.
And of course, that was a time etched in our memory when death and business came into one picture. And business owners were affected significantly because their businesses were shut down. They had to deal with furlough and all things like that. But they also, as individuals, were facing, as we all were, mortality and
an uncertain future.
It was a horrible time.
Yes.
And we've all thankfully moved on.
Yes.
And actually what surprises me, how many of us have forgotten that feeling.
Yes.
And so many people made good plans at the time. Once this is over, once I've got my business through this hump, I'm going to sort out my life.
Yes. Yeah. Well, look, as I was saying earlier, Melinda, I think taking certain actions for ourselves as individuals can often feel a bit of a headache.
Yeah.
I call it admin, but essentially these are very important things to do. You were talking about making a will, and I was suggesting to you about people who might own a property in a buy-to-let. They just may have regular day jobs but own a buy-to-let property. One of them may die. What happens to that buy-to-let property? Do they have life cover that potentially can be taken out under the limited company as a tax deductible and paid to their partner or paid to the children, and then decisions can be made
about... Or their co-business partner.
Exactly.
This is something people don't really think about, that actually maybe the easier thing would be to have a joint life policy with their co-director, with their co-business partner, so that actually the surviving director can pay the family and own the whole company.
Yes.
It's what, and this is why co-directors, co-business owners, partners in business really need to be sharing a little bit more about their personal lives and what would work.
Yes.
Business owners sometimes look at succession in good times, sometimes don't.
Yes.
But what if one has got somebody in their family that would want to come in and take over, whereas the other person doesn't?
Yes.
You've got to have that ability within the shareholders agreement, haven't you?
Yes. Yeah.
To allow sale or transfers to other parties.
Melinda, it's the first question I ask my client when they come with a potential issue. I say, where's the shareholders agreement?
Yeah.
What does the shareholder agreement say?
Yeah.
And the majority of the time it will be, I don't know, the accountant did it at the time, or we just did a basic one. And that's the problem,
Yeah.
because it's great having something as opposed to nothing. But equally, if that's something you have is silent upon all of the key issues that you need addressing, it is pointless.
I mean, when we're talking companies, we're also talking partnerships, aren't we?
Yeah.
And I know you and I have recently dealt with a case where one partner in a business died, but the business had quite a lot of debt.
Had a lot of liabilities.
Had a lot of liabilities. And in fact, the surviving partner was not really aware of them, not having been so involved with the business side. And there you are, dumped with these liabilities.
Rather significant liabilities, And often you may have two partners or two people in a relationship. You might have a married couple whereby the husband or wife is registered under the limited company.
Yes. Just because they...
Well, it could well be for tax purposes. It could well be that they do a bit in the company. I don't know. Often these are the schemes that I see set up by accountants with companies. So I assume that they are what's right for those individuals at the time in the business. But the point being is, on the death of someone, what happens to that other individual?
Well, yes. And it's really important to note at this point as well, because I can see that we're running out of time. And I want to touch upon the fact that actually making a will is crucial, because if you own a business and you die without a will, then your spouse, if you have one, will only get the first $322,000 of your estate. Now, okay, the spouse can be the administrator and can work out where that $322,000 will come from and whether the company fits within that.
It's not much, Melinda.
But it's not very much at all.
No.
You think of the family home, etc.
Yeah.
And then if you've got children who are under 18, they will actually be entitled to a part of the estate. And that's highly complex, because children cannot say, that's okay, Mum, you can have my shares to enable the business to be run. They can't give consent.
Okay.
So then you've got a situation, well, it's just a mess, really. If you were to also then think about somebody single who's got children, when I say single, I mean not married, because cohabitation is not recognised on intestacy provisions in this country.
Okay, I didn't know
So
that.
you've got a couple that live together, have children, no will. The children are entitled to the estate. So if that estate includes the business, you have to go to court for a declaration as to how we're going to manage that. If you've got somebody who's married for a second time, got children from a first relationship.
Blended families. It's very current.
So it's so important. And of course, not only could it mean that those you wanted to benefit don't, but it can also mean that the estate is strangled for months with no money getting anywhere.
At the worst time.
At the worst time. Until it goes to court, goes through a process for it all to be unravelled.
At a significantly expensive sum of money.
Yeah, and similarly, going back to the incapacitated point, if a director of a business loses mental capacity, doesn't have a power of attorney, court of protection, minimum 9 months before you get a court order.
Yeah. What happens then in the meantime? That's the thing.
It's stuck.
Yeah. Yeah.
So again, we're dealing with an estate, aren't we, where somebody's lost capacity.
Yeah.
And I think he had 6 or 7 associated companies.
Yes.
And nobody knows which accountants were dealing with which part, because the records are quite a mess.
Yes.
And nobody's got the right to deal with any of it.
Yes. No, it's an expensive headache, and one that could have been avoided.
Yeah. So in 2 lines, as a very experienced lawyer who deals with a multitude of small to much larger business owners.
Yeah, national, international.
What are you going to be telling them to do?
Make a will, without question.
Yeah.
See Giles Wilson, see the
Make
private
a power of
client
attorney.
department. Make a power of attorney.
See me.
Yeah.
Thanks, Roy.
Thank you.